All right, well, I'd like to say hello and welcome to the preview of Westford's annual town meeting. My name is Laura Dickey and I act as spokesperson for the Westford League of Women Voters. We're very excited to be hosting this jointly tonight with the town of Westford and look forward to answering all of your questions about our upcoming annual town meeting. Tonight's event is being recorded for future rebroadcasting. We ask that you keep your mics muted to prevent unwanted background noise. You may ask questions using the chat feature in the GoToMeeting software. You'll see it sort of a little questions panel off to the side. Elizabeth Almeida will be keeping an eye out for the questions and we'll try to ask them at the appropriate time depending on where we are and what the question addresses. We will also make sure we address any questions that were submitted online. With us here tonight, among many other people, but to be speaking are Susan Spooler, Town Moderator, Jody Ross, Town Manager, Andrea Perriner-Sweet, Chair of the Select Board, and Dan O'Donnell, Finance Director. We will be discussing both the way town meeting will be held during these unique times, and then moving on to the motions themselves. As a reminder, town meeting will be held on Saturday, June 20th at 9 a.m. on Trustees Field at Westford Academy. So I think we'll start off with Town Manager Jody Ross talking about how annual town meeting will be held. So Jody, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Laura. This has been really exciting trying to figure out a way to hold the town meeting, and I've been talking to the selectmen about this for several weeks and months, and I think we have a good plan. So on the screen, we actually have a diagram of Westford Academy, the trustees field, and when you arrive, you may park anywhere you want, depending on how many steps you want to get on your Fitbit or your watch, but we will all enter in one area, and I think Eric's controlling the little arrow there. So you will all enter here. As you see, there's, if we can zoom in a little, Eric, you can see there's arrows going in two directions, and that's to kind of allow people to, hold on, he's got to move it up a little bit. We'll be forming lines such as we do at Market Basket, 6 feet apart. There will be a greeter, and if you go down a little bit, the lines down a little bit there, the arrow's got a mind of its own, but you can see we'll have people in lines 6 feet apart waiting to be brought into the check-in area. The arrow is actually at the check-in area. That's where the tellers will be. And we also will have cones there to keep people spaced out and helpers so that we're not getting within 6 feet. When you get checked in, we're going to do things a little bit differently this year. You're going to receive a voting card, which is, I believe, a fluorescent or bright yellow. And you will be given your motion packet. Your motion packet will include some more information like where the comfort tent is and where you can go to the restroom if you need to. He's trying to point at the comfort tent. The restrooms will be down here. We will have the school open too with custodians if you'd prefer to go in the school to use the facilities that will be open. If you go back to the field or once you get checked in, we're going to have you go to the far entrance to get into the field. I think Eric can show that. So we're not walking, well, actually, and it goes into a fence right where the P is. That is a police officer. We will have 4 police officers. Up front on the stage will be the moderator and the town clerk and town council. We will have the boards, the selectmen will be on the bottom part and the finance committee a little bit further, and the school committee will be on the other side of the moderator. We'll have microphones for the presenter, which is the big black mic in the middle there. And then we will have 4 microphones for people that would like to speak. And Eric's pointing to them. 3 are up front and 1 is midway back in the field. We will have the microphones adjusted at different heights, so you don't have to adjust it. If you're, say, 5'4" like me, you'll go to the lower mic, and if you're 6 foot or like Dan, you will go to the larger or the higher mic, so you're not touching it. If someone does touch the microphone, we plan to have it cleaned. So, but we prefer no one touch the microphone. We're asking everyone to wear masks. We will have face coverings and masks. If you do not have them when you walk in, you will be handed one. We'd like everyone to keep their mask on except when they're speaking at the microphone because it's difficult to speak. That's why you're giving a voting card, the orange card when you walk in. When the moderator calls for the people in favor of the motion, you will raise your hand with the voter card. Or if she asks for the people opposed to the motion, you will raise the voter card. Many town meetings are conducted this way. It's easier for the moderator to see a card versus a hand. And it also shows that you have been checked in and you are a registered voter. So the chairs will be spaced 6 feet. Well, actually, we've got the chairs on the 15-foot goal lines, or whatever they're called. I should know. And they will be 8 to 10 feet apart. But we had several requests for couples who would like to sit together. So there will be chairs put together. I believe it's every other chair grouping. There'll be 1 chair or 2 chairs together if you're a couple or you live in the same home. Otherwise, we'd like you to be socially distant. There will be some shade tents. There's not going to be shade for everybody, but those sensitive to the sun can have get under the shade tents. Unfortunately, we can't have a big tent on this artificial field, but they are available. We will have, we're asking you to bring a hat, wear a hat, bring a small umbrella if you want. If it's a light sprinkle, we may try to hold it anyway. If it's a downpour, the moderator and the chairman of the selectmen will make a decision to postpone, and that would be continued to Monday night at the same place. And that would be called early in the morning, and we would get that out as a notification for everyone. So we'll have hand sanitizers strategically placed around the field. We'll have a lot of people to help you, to assist you, to try to keep everybody as safe as possible. And the Merrimack Valley Medical Reserve Corps will be there to assist too, and in that comfort tent where we'll have water, sunscreen, insect repellent, other face coverings. We have an ambulance. We have firefighters in case anyone, has to go see those people. And then when you leave, we're hoping you go out that entrance. As many as can will go out where the ambulance is, straight out into the parking lot. We are going to have the Gordon Seavey Award, which will be at 10 a.m. We're hoping this is a brief town meeting where we handle the critical issues of the town. I've heard a few town meetings have occurred recently. They were fairly brief, and that's why we have this forum tonight to answer any questions we can before the town meeting. So that's pretty much what I have to say. If we this will seat over 317 people. If we have more than that, we have overflow in the bleachers. We are just asking it's actually the home bleachers. We are just asking you to stay 6 feet apart unless you're from the same family.
Jody, there are a few questions. The first one is, do we anticipate check-in will take longer in this format, and how early should we encourage folks to arrive?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. We are asking people to get there about 8:30. I mean, you have to walk. This is a big area. You have to walk quite a ways to get in and get checked in and get seated. If you could get there at 8:30, that would be great, or earlier. We'll be there at 8.
Thank you. And then we have another question asking if any kind of literature will be allowed outside the gate.
That is the moderator's call. If it is for an election, it would have to be 150 feet outside. And I would just encourage everybody, if you are having literature, that you make sure that it is sanitized, because we're taking very big steps here to keep everybody safe. So
we have a few folks who have raised their hand. I'm not sure if we prefer to unmute these folks and have them ask their question, or questions can also be typed into the question box and we can read them when it fits into the meeting this evening. Do you have a preference, Andrea or Laura?
If they want to ask the question, I mean, that's how we would normally, if we were all in the same room, they get to ask the questions themselves. So I'm okay with that, as long as technologically we can make that work easily.
Okay.
I can't see the hand raising, so
sure. So there's a
you
question
let me
from
know.
Neil. There's Neil Berenson.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually one of the checkers, and when we have town meetings at the middle school, it's oftentimes very hard to hear some of the people when they're telling us their name. I can only imagine with a mask, it's going to be a lot more difficult to hear these folks. Most of us who are checking in, who are doing the checking, are seniors, and our hearing is not necessarily the best either. Has anybody thought about perhaps having people just write their name on a piece of paper and handing it to us? Or I'm not sure if that's really sanitary under these current conditions, but I see that as a potential issue.
Okay, I think we can easily take care of that. What I would say, we do have volunteers. We could have a volunteer to assist there where they could have a mask and gloves and write or print the person's name to show you if you can't hear it. We're happy to, and we can test that out ahead of time and see if that's a problem. If you're 6 feet away and I think you need to lower your mask to say your name, I think you can, but within 6 feet, we're asking people to make sure they keep their masks on.
Thank you, Neil. Jody, there's a question if we'll be stamping hands as we have done in the past.
No, you are given a card and you want to keep your card with you. That's your voting card. So as long as you have that card, you can go to the restroom, come back and still have your card. But
yeah, and just to bring up the point, somebody asked about literature from candidates, but candidates, if they're not handing out things, they can still be there. They just have to be 150 feet away from the entrance.
Susan's raising her hand, I think.
I'd like to just ask that if people are asking, normally we'll have tables outside in the hallway at town meeting, and I'm asking people to, if they have something really important they need to be sharing, to put it on a poster and put it on an easel on the sidewalk across the driveway from the entrance, please.
Okay. So
honestly, I think it's better if they're not handing out materials. We're really trying to be safe here, and that might defeat the purpose if we're handing out materials that we're not sure are sanitized.
Right, but if they want to just stand there with a sign or something like that, they could do that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There'll be a
yes.
somebody will tell them where they can stand, I would assume, once they got there. So okay.
We will make sure we have a volunteer there to tell them that.
Great. Were there any more questions about town meeting before we?
I don't think so. Judy Culver had her hand up, but I think it's down. I assume, Judy, perhaps your question has been answered. I think we can move on.
Great. I think let me double check on. I think what I had next was that Susan was going to speak to the consent agenda before we got into the motions. Or Andrew, did you want to talk about citizens petitions? We can do either one first.
I can certainly start with citizens petitions. So first of all, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us all tonight. These are interesting times, and we've certainly gotten creative in trying to keep town meeting running. And I think years from now, when they look back on this and they read the town report for 2020 or fiscal year 2020, you know, we will have held a historic town meeting outside on the trustee fields at Westford Academy. Currently on the agenda are 5 citizens petition articles. We have reached out to the petitioners for each of these articles and have asked them if they would be willing to agree, assuming that town meeting agrees, to postpone action on their petition articles until the fall town meeting. Each of these, the petitioners for each of the articles has agreed to the postponement of their articles until October town meeting. And with the exception of Article 12, which is to assess the cost effectiveness of outsourcing ambulance services, the other 4 will be brought back at October town meeting. The petitioner for Article 12 does not intend to bring this back, and had we been going forward with town meeting in March, would have been seeking to have the article withdrawn. So the plan for at town meeting is at the beginning of the town meeting to take these, to ask for a motion that these 5 articles be taken out of order. And if that motion is allowed, then to ask the town meeting to dismiss the 5 articles with the understanding that the selectmen have agreed that 13, 14, 15, and 18, which are the articles that deal with Indigenous Peoples Day, an article that the Board of Selectmen petitioned the General Court for an additional alcohol license, an article that clarifies the memorandum of understanding between the town of Westford and Westford Community Access TV, and also the article dealing with the disposition of 63 Main Street, all be brought back at our October town meeting. And then town meeting will vote on whether or not they wish to dismiss those articles. And of course, as always, if somebody has a hold on a particular article, we can take that article up separately.
Right.
Andrea,
So we, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sure. I just wanted to comment here. There was a question about, Mike Furman submitted a question regarding the ambulance fund article, and we're not going to take time to answer all of Mike's questions tonight since the article is going to be dismissed.
Right. Although he's welcome certainly to bring those questions up at town meeting, Elizabeth, and if,
We have a question here from Judy Culver.
Okay.
Judy, do you want to ask your question? I think, there we go. Go ahead, Judy.
Hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I was just fiddling with the buttons, trying to figure it out. I don't have a
Okay.
question. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll still.
Good practice still. So I think we might touch on them briefly. I think we're not going to go into detail on those motions today. Although certainly if anyone has any questions, we can as we're going through the warrant. Susan, would you like to talk about the consent agenda and our plans for that?
Sure, Jody will be helping me out with that. We
Yeah,
will be
I'm
going
happy
through-
to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll be going through the questions and we'll be combining certain articles together, and I will go through each line item, and if you have a question, and and if you have a question, say hold, and then we will answer your questions. But prior to, what we will do is we will go through and all the questions that do not have a question or a hold on them, we will vote on them and to move right along, and then we'll go back and then answer questions, and then we will re-vote on the questions that you have a question for.
So
Right.
just to clarify and to help a little bit here, so the voters at home know we're proposing that the consent agenda include Article 1, which is accept town reports, Article 6,
6.
which is appropriate for perchlorate expense, Article 7, which is authorize revolving funds, Article 9, which is Chapter 90, to accept Chapter 90, which is for roads, 10, which is the water enterprise OPEB funding, 11, which is to authorize the board to accept easements. And those are easements for things like poles and, things like that, not big easements, utility poles. And Article 16, which is to merge the Affordable Housing Committee and Affordable Housing Trust into one committee. And then 17, which is accept Jenny Richards Road. So most of these we do them or similar articles every year. So we thought if we could combine them, if Susan reads them, people can put holds, but if not, then we will vote them as a block.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, John. Okay.
Okay, Susan, did you have anything else you wanted to say
No,
about
that was it.
running
Well,
town meeting? Okay.
oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you,
So I
Abby.
think we'll start going as we tend to do in these previews. Just go through the warrant article by article. Sometimes it's just good to know if, especially if people ask questions now or we explain things now, it hopefully gives people more background on it so that they might not need to ask the questions at town meeting. So Article 1, accept town reports. Andrea, I think you were going to speak to this.
Sure. This is our annual Article 1, which is always to accept town reports, which can be found in the booklet Town Reports that we usually hand out at town meeting. I know, Jody, you were going to look into this. Are those books going to be available Saturday or not?
Those books will be available, sanitized and ready to be distributed.
Oh,
Great.
so they will. Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought.
Oh yeah, they're ready. They
Oh.
were ready back in February, I believe. So
Okay. So that's right, because that's for anybody who doesn't remember. That's like the nice glossy little book that has descriptions of everything that's happened in town. So if you're collecting your own set, gotta get this one. Great. And then Article 2, the amend the wage and classification plan. Jody.
sure. So I'll speak a little bit about this. This is actually creating a Department of Public Works. That's something we tried to do about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, but I don't think the town was ready. But we're bringing it forward again. I'd like to explain a little bit as to why. We're hoping to consolidate several departments into one department to reduce costs and improve service. We want to reduce any redundancy we have, any overlap. We want to improve staffing flexibility. We want to utilize technology to a greater extent. And ultimately, we're attempting to reduce costs, improve efficiency, and explore regionalization and improve the services we deliver to the public. I think it's interesting to note that the highway, tree warden, engineering, water, and wastewater departments, which are part of the departments where we'd like to consolidate, they comprise about 7% of our budget in fiscal year 20, the current year. With stormwater, as most of you know, we are adding a stormwater enterprise budget that brings it up to about 8%. Out of our capital requests this year, which have changed because we are deferring many of those till fall because of what's happened with COVID, but the capital in the DPW related departments represent almost 50% of everything we're asking for. So we think it's really important that we pull all that together under one department head. We're looking at succession planning. We have people that, may be retiring, and we did have a big retirement in the fall from one of our operations supervisors in highway that was challenging. We've met those challenges, and we want to, increase or decrease our operational costs, but add different services. We have lots of unfunded mandates that you hear about from time to time from OSHA, the EPA, Mass DEP, and this will help us better handle those. So basically what we would do if this is approved is we would start budgeting, planning, and operating as one organization with all those departments versus as individual silo departments. We do believe we'll be able to reduce costs. We do believe we can increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the department. The demands on these departments have increased substantially over the years, and we really need to get a better grip over all of them. So basically what this article is doing is it is creating a Department of Public Works director. It will also create a Department of Public Works business manager. It would be my intention to promote the water superintendent, Steve Cronin, and the water business manager, Larry Pinero, into those positions. We have negotiated to take a operations supervisor from highway out of the union, so that's part of this too. And the water superintendent, which is what position Steve Cronin holds now, we've recommended that be lowered a band because it will have a direct oversight. So I think it's important to note that we have taken this to all town boards that are pretty much relevant to this decision, and all of them have voted in favor. That includes the selectmen, finance committee, I believe the school committee voted, water commissioners, the tree committee, forest committee, not tree committee. They've all voted in favor. We had a DPW group studying this for many, many years, and we really think it's time. The cost is not significant. It is in the budget that we have put forth. And as I said, we do hope to be able to reduce costs in the future. So in a nutshell, without a PowerPoint, that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm hoping we will be successful this time.
Great, thank you. That's a lot
Jody,
of, that's a lot of great information. Yeah, okay.
We do have a question that just came in asking what is the increase in salary for these promotions?
Dan, do you want to pull that up? The actually the water superintendent that we fill would go down because we did ask for a band decrease, and the person, let me also mention, I forgot this, the Personnel Advisory Committee has approved and supported all these changes. The highway operations supervisor, there would be no change, but there would be a salary adjustment for the DPW director, that promotion. And Dan, what is that amount?
For the DPW director?
Yes, for
Yes,
the
okay.
promotion. I think I know the number, but I'd rather you tell the number from that we would give to Steve to promote him into this position.
I believe it was around $12,000 or so.
Yeah,
up to about
that's what I was
130.
going to say.
Yeah.
And the director, not the director, the Larry, the business manager. Do you remember the exact amount? Do you have that handy?
It was a few $1,000s, so I don't have the exact in front of me, but I will look for it.
Generally what I do when someone gets a significant promotion is they generally get about a 10% raise. That seems to be fair and standard, but we can get those exact figures and make that available.
Yeah, based on what's in the motions document, it looks like it goes from a band 7 up to a band 9. So, right, that's what, I mean, that's what's in the motions guide that we'll have, right?
Yes, that's where it falls on the non-union pay scale. And what we do, and again, we did this with the Personnel Advisory Committee. We look at the responsibilities for the position, and there's a whole lot of information we share, and then they total up all the numbers and they kind of tell us where it belongs. And this is the band that they felt was suitable.
I see.
And I mean, remember, this person will be supervising not only the highway superintendent, but our town engineer and our water superintendent, tree warden, GIS, all the administrative staff. I do have a org chart. I don't know whether people want to get that deep, but I do have an org chart that does show, and it's quite an expanded role that this person will have, but we are very confident this is in the best interest of the town moving forward.
Great.
And all this is
Elizabeth,
available on our website too.
Oh, okay, that's good. Good to know. Elizabeth, were there any other questions on this article?
I don't see any other questions. Hopefully I haven't missed any.
Here's the org chart. Oh, cool.
Oh, that was quick.
Leave that,
Yes, so
leave that up for a second.
you can see that the DPW
yeah.
director will report to me, but they will have a relationship with the Board of Water Commissioners and the Town Forestry as they do now. And then you can see all the water still stays intact. And in the middle is kind of more of the combined positions under Public Works. And then we have the Forestry Committee, the Highway Department, and then the Engineering Department. So it is a very much expanded role from where the Water Superintendent was sitting before this.
Jody, there is
Great.
another question here asking if we can, when will the public have specifics on where we will ultimately save money when we combine the departments?
Soon. I mean, we've got to do this first, and then once they get in their role, I've been told that Larry Panero, who would be the new business manager, is kind of itching to get in there and start seeing what he can do. So we could report at the next town meeting if that's what people would like. I'd be happy to do that.
Laura and Andrea, it's Mark. Can I just chime in for a second?
Sure.
So as many people know, this is one of the areas that some of us pushed for about 10 years ago or so. And to answer the question about the cost savings, we need to be careful about talking between cost savings and cost avoidance for future infrastructure projects. There is a very significant potential benefit on cost avoidance going forward. The town, as we've talked about for many years, has a rolling $50 million plus capital requirement that never gets filled. And while the departments under Jody's leadership have done a fantastic job of working together in trying to improve some of these overlaps that go on between departments, particularly engineering and highway and water, when projects get done, the ability to be under one person to prioritize the projects properly has the opportunity to save a lot of money in future projects. That's what I refer to as cost avoidance, as opposed to cost savings, which are dollars that are coming out of the budget today versus 10 years ago.
Thank you. Oh, Jody. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that actually we've already saved money by just planning to do this. If you remember, Mark, in the fall when we did the capital, I think that Highway had asked for about, I think it was about $500,000 worth of vehicles, and we decided not to fund any of those trucks until we combined to see how we could better utilize across town departments. So we already took about $500,000 out of the capital request that came forth this fall. And the other thing I want to mention is, I'm pushing 12 years here now in August, if I survive. And we hired Steve Cronin into the water department. I believe it was about 10 years ago. He's probably out there in the background, almost 10 or just over 10. Your water rates have not gone up once in those years. They've done a fantastic job of planning how to manage the water department and the infrastructure, their equipment. And so I really want to bring that forth to the whole public works area moving forward in the future. So we would be promoting someone who has a right-hand person in Larry Panero to go oversee many more departments, but with a proven track record. So I just wanted to mention that.
We do have a few more questions. Two questions were directly related to the org chart, and the first had to do with where can the public find the org chart online available after tonight? Where is that?
So if it is not on the town meeting website, we will make sure to get that up immediately before even we're done with this meeting, I think. But it can be found there, and I will also make sure we link it on my website, the town manager. and we'll get up a DPW right after town meeting. So.
And then Jody, also on the org chart, question from Emily Teller about where the superintendents have been reporting to boards. How will that work with the tree warden and the Board of Water Commissioners? How will that work now with the DPW?
So they don't really report to those boards. They have a very, you know, supportive relationship with those boards, but they do report directly to me. But that's not going to change. The water superintendent will still attend all of the Board of Water Commissioners meetings, and the tree warden will still attend the town forestry committee. Actually, I think the tree warden's on that committee, but that won't change. There's been a very close relationship and very supportive relationship, but the direct report has been to me, and that will continue. Those two boards will have interaction with the DPW, and that's why we have a dotted line. But we have it's been very successful. I have not had any complaints over the years. I think we've got a very cohesive team, and we're just trying to organize it a little differently.
There's one more question. Joseph Vazella asked again about where do you anticipate the cost savings with the DPW, and he added a comment, a concern about the expectation of less state aid. You know, how might the creation of the DPW help us if we do have less state aid?
Well, so as I just mentioned, we have already saved over $500,000 by anticipating we're doing this. We're going to have to look at these positions. It's not really the heavy equipment operators that we're talking about, because they're pretty much straight out, and we have some openings that we haven't filled in a couple of years anyway. But maybe with the admin staff, where right now we're doing payroll in water, we're doing payroll in engineering, and we're doing payroll in highway. We're going to do payroll in one department. That would be the DPW. So that would be streamlined right off the bat. And then, of course, we have invoices, purchases, contracts, everything that's spread out in all these different silos. That will be all, you know, basically consolidated under one director and business manager. So attrition is where we would look at savings in positions. I have not planned, you know, pending state aid to do layoffs in this area. But if there's attrition, we certainly will look at whether we need to fill positions as we move forward. There is a spending freeze right now and a hiring freeze, which is something I'm going to speak about right before the budget. So I would say, rest assured, you are going to have savings, and that's our goal, to run a better department more efficiently and more effectively for the future.
Yeah, and capital efficiencies, I think, as you referenced before, there will be significant capital efficiencies going forward.
Great. Okay, that's a good segue into Article 3. If there are no more questions on Article 2, which is Article 3, which is our approving the capital appropriations. I think, Dan, you're going to speak to this.
I will, yes.
Got a few motions here.
I will say that the budget document that's on the town manager's website, it does have org charts for every department, including this one. So if you want to flip through that, this is in there. So this is our condensed capital plan that we had modified after the whole COVID episode happened. I did go back and count in the original motions. We had 29 articles back when we drafted the original motions after the capital planning committee had gone through the original capital plan. We worked very closely with the department heads, the capital planning committee, the board of selectmen, school committee, and finance committee to basically pare this down and only fund the requests that are absolutely necessary at this time. Since we have 13 articles, and I'll run through those pretty quickly. Some may seem familiar. We have $25,000 for town computer replacements. Back in May, we actually had to fund a portion of the total request, $15,000 for town computers through a budget transfer, because we had to purchase laptops right away so people could work remotely. Same thing with the school computers. The request right now is $162,800. We actually had to transfer $102,000 into their budget last month so that the IT department could purchase the school computers for the incoming freshmen. Next up, we have phase 3 of our townwide VoIP phone system replacement. This will take care of the last 3 schools. It'll allow us to have our contractor keep going on that project. Next, we have a police department boiler for $167,000. This is urgent. It needs to happen before the winter comes, or the police may not have heat. Next up is $385,000 for self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire department. Their equipment's at the end of their useful life, and we don't want to spend money repairing it at this point. This is to outfit every firefighter that we have. Next up is $20,000 for the schools for the WA visitor bleachers. This is a small part of a much larger article that's coming out during the Community Preservation Committee to build a building outside the trustees field at WA. Next, we have more boiler repairs for the Christopher Foley Miller School. Again, we need to get this done before the winter. We have Blanchard School Flexion signage and safety upgrades for $30,000. As many of you may know, we had a fatality there last year, and these are recommendations by the Town School Safety Task Force to make that intersection safer there with the Blanchard School. And then we have Stony Brook School generator control repair. The thing doesn't work, so it needs to be replaced. So jumping down here, what we're doing in this article is we're transferring money from projects that were previously bonded to another project. So that requires a town meeting vote. So basically what we're trying to do here is fund a new generator for WA. I believe the one that we currently have there is from 1973, so it's almost 50 years old. It's time for an upgrade, and we are planning on having WA be our second technology hub. So it's very critical that we have a working generator there. Now, the next 2 articles are to issue bonds. These are both Town and School Safety Task Force recommendations. The first one is basically to outfit all the schools with access readers so people can scan their card and walk into the school rather than have to use keys. It's much safer. And the second article for $110,000 is to purchase radios for school staff to speak directly with first responders. And then finally, I know Steve Cronin has been itching to get this article passed. It's to replace the water main at Kersey Circle and Douglas Road and Anderson Lane. We have a water break about once a year there at least. So we're all set to go. If this is passed at the town meeting, Steve plans on bringing the approval to the selectmen on June 23rd.
Can I ask one quick question on this? Normally, water stuff gets paid out of the Water Enterprise Fund, so this isn't. No,
this is so the Water Enterprise will pay the debt payments in future years. So it's fully funded by water. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We had a question about the boiler at the police station, and someone asked for an explanation about why it costs so much. I thought that was quite expensive for a boiler. Do you have information on that, Dan?
Is Paul Fox out there by any chance?
Yes, he is.
All right. I see him there. Mike, did you let him speak?
Okay. Oh.
Go ahead, Paul.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
So, hello, my name is Paul Fox. I'm the Director of Facilities for the town of Westford. The question, I believe, is how come the boilers cost so much at the police station? We worked with a series of vendors to give us quotes for a similar repair. Each one of the boilers is designed to run the building at capacity in case of failure. So there is built-in redundancy with the system. There is, again, 2. So one goes down, the other one can carry the load of the building. Additionally, we have looked into higher efficiency boilers. The ones that are there right now are of a lower end quality, probably something right around 70%. Whatever we put in place will be above 90%, and will also qualify for National Grid reimbursements. So there will be some cost savings down the road to upgrade to something of a higher efficiency. But again, working with qualified vendors from the state contract, this is about roughly what they are projecting for a price to swap that out, and in addition to integrate it into the building management system.
So are you replacing both then, or is this just replacing?
That is correct. Both of the boilers are at the end of their useful life. For the past 2 or 3 years, the police chief has been getting by. We have spent some money on maintenance and repairs to them, and it's again, these boilers are now officially at their end of life. It was a close call last winter, and it is.
Okay. Any more questions on the capital?
I don't have
Okay.
any.
Okay. And we will, thank you, Dan, for that. Well, we will move on to Article 4, appropriate from sale of cemetery lot receipts reserved for cemetery improvements. And I think, Jody, you were going to speak to this.
Yes, so our cemetery at the Pine Grove needs to be expanded, and we've been talking about this for a couple of years now. And basically what this is they're asking to take money that they have in their cemetery lots receipts reserved and use it to design an expansion of that cemetery. So my understanding is there's about maybe 18 months more space there before we run out. And so we'd like to get this moving now.
Is that using existing land that the town already owns, or that they don't need to acquire land, it's just to?
Right, the town has, I think it's about, and Jim Duane is in the background, but I believe it's around an 8 acre parcel, and we've developed the front. We did add about an acre about 2 years ago, I think, and I did take this to Capitol 2 years ago, and so I think they're asking to use money that comes in from the sale of cemetery lots, hire a designer, and get going on. They'll have to come back for the construction costs, but get going on how we're going to do this in a beautiful and yet efficient manner.
Great, thank you. Okay, don't hear any questions, so move on to Article 5, which is.
Hold on, I think we do have one question.
Oh, we
here.
do?
Yes,
Okay.
we have a few questions.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. No, that's okay.
Will the expansion go under the power lines?
Jody,
I hear a voice that sounds like Jim Duane, who's
it is.
Parks,
Can you hear?
Grounds, Rec, and Cemetery Director. So Jim, why don't you jump in and answer that question?
Happy to jump in, and thank you for the opportunity. The expansion right now is not slated to go under the power lines. The property line abuts the power lines. There's a little bit of a buffer between the power lines and the cemetery. And the section that we're talking about developing is a section that was cleared about 2 years ago, just before I came on as the cemetery director. And we are just taking that section that was cleared, roughly 3/4 of an acre, and developing it with new grave space.
And another question about the cemetery, is this for caskets or geared for cremation?
So as of right now, we're very much in preliminary design. The preliminary design accommodates, I guess what you would refer to as a traditional burial, which is with a casket. There's also a small area currently being designed into the expansion to accommodate green burial. And I would anticipate that there'd probably be some room for additional cremation burial, but we do have that capacity existing.
Thank you. Can we bring Paul Fox back? We have a few more questions about boilers.
Okay.
There's a question about redundant boilers. If we build a new municipal building, will these boilers be used for that building as well? And are they being sized to do that?
The simple answer to that question, again, I believe that this is in relationship to the town annex building that was talked about at some point. So as long as I'm correct on that, the answer to that is no. These boilers are simply just for the police station, sized independently for the police station. Again, it's to replace the same amount of BTUs that is currently there right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
right,
I think we're good now.
Okay, thank you. Article 5, then approve Community Preservation Committee recommendations. So Andrea, I believe you were going to speak to this.
Yes, so these are the projects that are being funded out of our community preservation funds for this year. And the first one is $190,000 from the undesignated fund balance for Conservation Trust Fund for future open space land purchases. This is funding that I think now for the past at least 5-6 years that we have done from the undesignated fund. It permits the Conservation Trust Fund to be able to act on purchases of open space when they become available, if they should become available in the town. The second one is $17,960 from undesignated fund balance for the Forge Village, the Forge VFW baseball field dugouts, and just sort of repairing and upgrading those dugouts. The next one is $40,000 for the Forge VFW skate park equipment. Then the one after, the following one is $111,500 from the undesignated fund balance for the Ronan McElliott Playground safety surfacing installation. That's the playground that's at the Graniteville, I think it's the Graniteville ball field. No, which one is it at? I forget.
It's at Edwards Beach.
Yeah, I was going to say it's up in Neb.
Yeah, it's at Edwards Beach. Then we have $97,150 from the undesignated fund balance for the Healthy Lakes and Ponds program. $14,413 from the Historical Resources fund balance for the Pageant Field stone wall restoration, and that's along Hilda Street. And then $750,000 from the undesignated fund balance for the design and construction of 8 tennis courts at the Robinson School. My understanding is that those tennis courts are in need of serious repair, and this will address that and actually replace them. And then
okay. That was my question, is if we were getting 8 more, you're replacing the existing ones.
And then $1,344,152 for the construction of a new amenities building at the Westford Academy's Trustees Field for recreational purposes. And that connected back into one of the capital funding requests that Dan talked about with respect to the bleachers. So those are the funding requests coming out of CPA funds for this town meeting.
Quick question on that. Why are the bleachers being funded differently than the rest of the building?
Dan, can you answer that?
Relatively small piece, so.
Yes.
Let me throw that to Dan.
So bleachers are considered part of a stadium, and we cannot use CPA funds to build a stadium. So this portion had to be carved out, and we have to use general funds for it. So we did the same thing last year when we asked for the design funding.
Ah, that's right. I remember that. Okay, thank you.
All right, so we had another question about bathrooms in that facility. Do we know if it will include bathrooms?
A lot of bathrooms.
Yes.
A lot of bathrooms.
All right.
It's the requirement to meet the state guidelines I know Paul Fox is out there. I don't know if, does anyone else remember how many bathrooms? I wish we had it before town meeting, but.
Yeah.
That would
So
be helpful.
Jody, if I can just add, so when the bleachers at Westford Academy were put in, it triggered a review by the health department and the Board of Health because the infrastructure that needed to support the number of people that the bleachers could hold so it triggered a whole new set of laws about how many bathrooms that you've needed. And that was many years ago. And so we're now at the point where we can't push this off anymore. And so I can grab my book from the Capital Committee, but I don't remember how many, but it's a very significant number of washrooms that will be included in this new building facility.
Mm-hmm. Jody, this is Bill Olson. May I just say that we have been operating on a temporary waiver with the understanding certainly that sooner rather than later, we will have to replace the porta potties with the permanent fixtures that is, as Mark said, the expansion of the bleacher project triggered in terms of the building code.
And we had an additional comment here from Marilyn Frank, who's on the CPC, and she said there will be an ADA compliant public bathroom. So not just bathrooms, but it will be ADA compliant.
So I did send a little text to Paul for those, who want to know. And there's actually going to be 21 bathrooms in one community. So that's a lot of bathrooms. So we can hold all future town meetings at our WA field if we choose to.
So
hopefully we don't have to.
We have questions about other CPC items. I don't know if, are we ready to move on from?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think any of them in Article 5 are fair game for questions. So
Sure. So Bill Harmon has his hand raised. Perhaps we could unmute Bill and let him ask his question.
Oh, good. I just want to know what is the $97,000 for in connection with lakes and ponds?
So, hi, Bill. My understanding is that it is in connection with educating the public with performing baseline studies of our lakes and ponds here in Westford. Not only sort of the ones that have an association like Nabnasset Lake and Long Sought for a Pond, but also some of the ones that, don't have an association that are referred to as sort of orphan ponds and lakes to perform studies, to do public education around, the protection of our ponds and lakes, to preserve them, for future generations. Funding for our Healthy Lakes collaboration. This is funding that I believe the CPC committee has recommended for the last 4 or 5 years that the town has accepted and approved for the last 4 or 5 years. So that's my understanding for what it's going to be used for.
Can you tell me, well, let me add that I live right next to Kai's Pond, and I'm particularly concerned with our pond here. Can you tell me whether this money would be used for putting some chemicals into this pond here?
So, go ahead, or Jody, I will.
Jody.
I think Carol Gumbart might be in the background. She is on that committee. Are you there, Carol?
Yes.
Okay, so let's have Carol speak to that. I know Kai's has been included, but Carol, could you give us a little more specifics?
Sure. So can you hear me? Okay. Every year, since I've been here now 5 years, we've been doing pre-season surveys using professionals to look at the invasive pond weeds. And based on their recommendations, the collaborative has determined whether we would do treatments. So they've just finished doing Kai's Pond, and we're just getting that information in now. So we'll be evaluating whether there needs to be any herbicide treatment for those invasives or not. And as Andrea and Jody both alluded to, there is also further public education monies that we use, as well as then a post-treatment survey, so that we can see how we've done in eradicating the non-native invasives. And we've also had some of the funds available if there's algal blooms, which occasionally we get and have to treat right away, so that we're not having the water make anyone sick if they're swimming or animals are getting into it.
And also my understanding, and Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, is that before herbicides can be used, it has to come before the Conservation Commission for approval, and you also need to notify the public to let them know that this might be occurring, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can I say something about this?
Oh, sure. Did you have another question, Bill? Or...
Well, I'm hoping that information like that would be available to the public. And I looked this afternoon on the internet and couldn't find any. So I guess I have a request to please make information like that available to us and the public.
We do have on the Healthy Lakes and Ponds website, we do have the past studies. They're just doing the pre-treatment studies now, so we only have draft information. I am of the understanding that both Nabnasset and long sought for pond and the association was before the Conservation Commission last night from long sought for to request to do some treatment for a weed that they just had a very difficult time with last year. So this time of year is the critical phase. I haven't heard yet on Kai's, but we can make that available as soon as we get that information.
Thank you.
Laura, we have a question about the tennis courts. We may need to have Jim Duane come back online. The question is, what is the expected utilization for the $750,000 worth of tennis courts? And then we have several questions related, I think, directly to that one, and some others just about general CPC funding. So perhaps we could have Jim answer this question first, and then we could answer the general CPC questions.
Sure.
So Elizabeth, I'm happy to speak to the tennis courts, as I did collaborate with Paul in terms of, supporting this and how operationally it was going to impact overall use of these types of facilities. But the actual application and the research and the work done on this project was done through Paul Fox's office. He was probably better prepared to speak to it than I am.
Great. Paul?
Jody, may I, Andrea, may I just, may I provide an answer to the need for those courts, please?
Sure.
We will not be able to hold any tennis matches for our high school tennis players on those tennis courts under the condition that they're currently in. So they are definitely a safety risk to anyone using those courts because of the heaving and the cracks in the surfaces. And so it's extraordinarily important that those be replaced so that we can have some varsity and sub-varsity tennis matches. Otherwise, our athletes have to travel to other locations.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a little bit, people who you might not know the area, that you can walk from WA right over to Robinson pretty easily. So I think that they're, I know they probably use them a little bit by Robinson, but are they used by middle schools at all, or just the high school?
Primarily the high school, Laura.
Okay.
And the public, of course.
Yeah, that's correct.
Paul, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes. Hello. So I believe that there were questions that were asked. One was in regards to where the funding is coming from, or rather what the funding will be used for. Pending the approval of this project, the first phase would be to hire a designer, definitely because of the size of the budget is a necessity. as a public works project. So we'll be hiring a designer. We're anticipating those costs coming in at about somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. And then from there, we seized a series of estimates, one working with just general contractors just to kind of place an estimate on what size of those projects cost. And then the other one looking at comparable projects nearby. I know the town of Wellesley just completed a tennis courts of similar nature, which we sized to be appropriate for the Robinson courts. And they're coming in probably right around 500,000, 550,000. So you add that onto the designer, and then you add in external elements, whether it be lighting, the fencing needs to be replaced. There's certainly a room for miscellaneous but well-needed expenses in there. So typically we would hire a designer first and then get a cost estimation from that, but do this process where we've chosen to kind of do the two simultaneously. So moving forward with the designer and then moving forward right away with the construction phase of this component. This will be something where the athletic director, Parks and Recs are certainly going to be involved in it, and will have a lot of input from various committees and personnel to make sure that we build something of the appropriate nature. And then again, I believe that there was kind of a talk, and to piggyback on some of the other answers regarding usage of it. Yes, of course, the public, it's heavily used by the public, but as Superintendent Olson alluded to, it is a major component right there for the high school. There are simultaneous programs going on at Stony Brook, which is really right now, has to be our primary courts for them. And then in addition, Park and Recs has a need for them. So right now we're really down a series of courts, and we're also suggesting moving from what is there now, I believe 5 courts to 8 courts, which is the ideal justification for what is needed to hold a varsity match. I believe the athletic director is on right now, but in talking to him, there's a lot of hardships and a lot of neighboring towns are having a difficult time competing on our courts just because all the programs are growing and it's hard to house both varsity and JV. However, again, 8 courts would support a much needed to house these matches. Be happy to answer any other questions. I'm sorry if that didn't completely get everything.
All right, so actually we do have a few other tennis court questions. Let's continue with those. So the question is, why not use the mill? I think, and do they have tennis courts there?
I might need Jim Duane's help on this one if he's around, but again, I don't believe that anything is of size. I think that Stony Brook has the second. I think the Stony Brook and Robinson have the most tennis courts in the town of Westford at, again, 5, and ideal operations to house or to successfully hold our operations of tennis would be, again, 8 for varsity and JV, followed by the middle school programming at the Stony Brook, which would also be able to hopefully support Park and Recs, and as well offer, again, public support as well.
Okay. Were there more other?
Yes.
tennis
So
ones, or- okay.
another tennis question. Roberta's asking if the tennis courts are also used for summer camps.
They certainly will be. It is our expectations that they will be used. And again, I think that this is an opportunity both for the schools department and Park and Recs department to certainly accelerate a program.
All right, I think that's everything. We do have a comment that perhaps the high school could use the Neshoba Tech tennis courts, but I'm not sure that's directly related to this.
If I could just add one other comment, I think that part of the reason why it is the Robinson courts is the location to Westford Academy themselves. A lot of the students in their freshman year and sophomore year may not have vehicle transportation. The fact that it is just a walk away, we have looked, and ideally the tennis courts would be placed at Westford Academy. Unfortunately, there's just no more room over there to support such a tennis courts or tennis courts.
Andrea, may I just say, and Elizabeth, that there is no guarantee that the Neshoba Tech courts might be available on those days where Western Academy would have a match with other school systems. So we'd want to make sure that we could guarantee that we could schedule tennis matches for the Western Academy athletes on our facilities.
Thank you, Bill. I think the next questions are more generally related to CPC and just how this article will work and how CPC funds work. So the first was at town meeting, can we vote either a partial funding? So if a project is $750, are we able to vote to approve part of that amount? And then the second question is, are we allowed to reject one line item in this article and approve the rest?
Susan,
So-
want to speak?
So the
okay.
So the answer to the last part of that question, can you reject a line item in this motion and accept the others? Yes. Just like any other multi-part article, if somebody has questions to ask about the particular allocations and funding, that you can put a hold on that article and that can be discussed separately, and then it can be voted, it can be rejected if that's the will of town meeting. So that's the second part of that question. Can we vote in a partial project and change the amount? The answer to that is no. And that's under Massachusetts general law and the CPC Act. In essence, the town meeting is only permitted to vote the recommendations of CPC up or down. But John has his hand up, and so he may be about to correct me.
It's such a rare occasion that I would have to correct you, Andrea, just for the record.
And can you just introduce yourself just so that everybody knows?
I think what you may be thinking of is that you can only vote the recommendation as made by the Community Preservation Committee. You can't expand, for example, the scope of the purposes for which the money would be used, but you can reduce the amount of the appropriation. And as you said, you can zero it out and reject the article altogether.
And just for folks who don't know, that was John Giorgio, our town council.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I hope that answers the question. Then we have a comment here, all nice projects, but not necessary at this time, given the financial impact of COVID on family income. And I was wondering if someone could speak to how CPC money is taxed and collected and held, and how that is outside the operational budget. Dan, do you want that one?
Or John? Yeah, Dan or John.
Or I can go, it's fine. So on your tax bills, there's a 3% CPA surcharge, which funds all these projects. The town voted in at 3%. It's statutory at this point. We will be collecting that moving forward. However, the use of these funds are restricted. They have to be used for open space, historical preservation, affordable housing, or recreation. So it's not like we can take these funds and use them to fund the general fund or teachers or anything like that. They are a restricted use.
Thank you. And related, there's a question, does the money from the quote undesignated fund balance come with restrictions for CPC uses? And if we deny these projects, would the money become free cash or go into the revolving fund or somewhere else?
No, they would stay within the CPC fund.
Thank you. Let me just look here and see if other questions have come in.
I think there's one more.
I think John has.
Oh, yes, several more have come. Yep.
So the requirements under the CPA is that every year the town has to either spend or set aside 10% of the revenue for affordable housing, historic preservation, and open base. Any money that is not appropriated, that from the anticipated revenue at the end of the fiscal year, that becomes the undesignated fund balance, and it's then available for appropriation for any CPA purpose.
As long as it's approved by the CPC, so.
It has to be approved by the
Yeah.
CPC and of course voted at town meeting.
And town meeting, right? You always get the
Thank you.
final, the town meeting always gets the final say.
So there is
That
a
way,
question
so-
if we could defer some of these line items until we have a better understanding of what state aid will look like this year. Could someone speak to the difference between how state aid impacts our budget and, as we've been talking about the CPC, that money's already in the account? Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. So this has nothing to do with our general fund budget. We can't use CPA funds for police, fire, administration, schools, whatever. State aid, it does come in and that goes directly to our general fund budget. These are projects that we thought we could leave on this town meeting because it has no impact to our bottom line. Even if the state cuts aid, this money is still there. So these are really independent projects from our overall general fund budget.
We have a comment from Marilyn Frank, who is on the CPC, that the CPC has always been very conservative to only spend the money that we have on hand and not spending the future distributions. And so Cynthia was asking for clarification that the article number 5 is not additional tax money. This is,
Yeah.
as you've explained, Dan, tax that's already on our tax bill, not additional money that will be raised.
Yes, this has been on our tax bill since 2003, I believe.
Thank you. And so there's a comment here that we may want to take a few minutes at town meeting to provide this general information about how CPC works so that we can remind voters what the impact is. Let me see. Hold on. We have another comment from Marilyn Frank. We also meet our 10% if we're spending money on specific projects for open house or open space and housing, etc. The question is, recreation considered part of open space, or does it have its own CPC category?
Its own.
And what is the current balance of the undesignated fund? And what would it be after these projects?
So the current balance is, let's see here, about $1,230,000 or so. And then after, this is just the undesignated balance. After these appropriations, it'd go down to about $35,000. However, the way we operate our CPA, then we add in the revenue from the rest of the year, which to date has been over 2.6 million. So they are sitting on a healthy balance moving forward into next year.
We can make this information available online with the town meeting packet as well.
All right.
All right. I think
Is that it?
I think I
Any
got
more?
all the questions related to CPC.
Yeah, I don't see any more,
That was a big
Elizabeth.
one.
Okay.
Okay, so Article 6, this is one of the items on the consent agenda, the appropriate for perchlorate expenses. Jody?
Yes, so unfortunately, I'm sure everybody remembers that we did have a perchlorate contamination problem of our water supply years ago, and we continue to have to comply with DEP requirements to manage that. We're getting better every year. The cost has been going down, and we've worked hard to try to make that happen. Originally, we had asked for 110,000 in this town meeting, but we decided to split that. 55,000 could get us through, and we're going to try to stretch that as far as we can, and then we will come back in the fall for additional appropriation.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions on that?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Great.
Nope.
Article 7, also on the consent agenda, authorize revolving funds. Dan, you're gonna just give people just a sort of overview of what revolving funds are. I know it seems to come up every year, so.
Sure. So these are what's referred to as 53E and a half revolving funds. where it's a budgeting mechanism that the town can use where each of these accounts here, they have a source of revenue that goes into the account, and then the the proponents of the revolving fund can spend that on the specified purpose listed here. So, for example, we have school parking that could be used to pay for crossing guards or improvements to the school parking lot. Same with school bus transportation. So the revolving accounts are actually accepted as a bylaw. All we're doing in this article is establishing a spending limit. Now, from last year, there are only 2 changes. It is the school parking. We're increasing this from 30,000 to 80,000, and that's because the school committee has recommended increasing the parking fees from $50 to $200 per person for the year for seniors. And then for the school bus transportation, that's increasing from 700,000 to 800,000 because the school bus transportation fees are recommended to be increased from $275 to $325.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Article 8, approve fiscal year 2021 operating budget. I have listed that Dan was going to speak to this, but Jody, did you want to say something first? You said you wanted to speak, so
Sure.
I'll give it to
Thank
you and
you,
then hand it over to Dan. Thanks.
So I just want to give a little bit of information before we get into this. So first of all, I generally give the state of the town before the budget at our annual town meeting. I'm not really going to do that this year. I might say a few words, but it will be available on the website tomorrow, and it does give updated information. But so this fiscal year 21 budget, we began a long time ago, back in July of last year, and we obviously had no idea what we would be facing this spring. Who knew how dramatically everything could change? But the original budget was proposed, and we started meeting with the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the School Committee in January and February. And there was a lot of discussion, those of you who watch those sorts of things. And in the end, it was recommended unanimously by the Select Board and the Finance Committee. In preparation for our March 28th town meeting, which now seems so long ago, the Finance Committee booklets were mailed to every household as required by our bylaws. But then on March 13th, town offices closed, schools closed due to the pandemic. The selectmen did postpone the town meeting and postponed it again. So in May, we went to the Board of Selectmen with a timeline of needed expenditures, and we went through the warrant, the original warrant and the budget, and we asked them to take some action as they can by transferring from one budget to the other at the end of the fiscal year. They did take that action, so that helped us to produce this streamlined warrant that we have brought to you today. So we are facing unknowns for fiscal year 21. Our local revenues are down. We have a $691,000 deficit right now. But I think our real uncertainty is what will our state funding be? We've heard rumors that it will be that we will be shorted from the state. About 20% of our budget is supported with state aid, but we don't know any specifics, and we're told we won't know till mid-August. So the town has taken several steps along with the schools since March to try to handle these situations that have that have come our way. So we implemented both town and school hiring freezes. We did implement town and school spending freezes, except on essential items necessary to continue operations. We reduced or eliminated any mileage reimbursements. We set up a COVID account with the select board authorization for all COVID-related expenses that the town is incurring. We are being told we can be reimbursed for those up to $2.1 million through the CARES Act and through FEMA. With this, with the school, our select board, the finance committee, and the school committee input, we delayed all non-time sensitive articles, capital articles, to the fall town meeting. In addition, I am meeting with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is our employee and retiree health insurance vendor, and I am trying to negotiate premium reductions because so many people avoided going to the doctor and continue to avoid. I am told that we should be due some significant premium reductions. That could mean a lot for us. So at the direction of the select board, we are bringing forth the original recommended budget that we have proposed prior to the town meeting next week. However, with the school superintendent and the school committee and the select board and the town finance people, we developed budget reduction scenarios that would allow us to swiftly react if state funding is reduced. We created several scenarios, which we did present to the boards last Tuesday, and we have tiered cuts if necessary based on the amount of reduction of state aid. So I think what's important to note going into town meeting is that the town and the schools can take immediate action if we are told that we are having a reduction in state aid. We don't need to go to town meeting to take that action, but we will bring those budget adjustments to our fall town meeting as we always do. But our actions to reduce those budgets are not contingent upon that meeting. So I just wanted to make that statement to bring everybody up to date if you haven't been attending some of the meetings we've been having, but Dan will then take it over to discuss the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Actually, could I jump in, Jody, with one question that came up that I think relates to the comments you just made? Joseph is asking why we are not approving a 1/12 or 3/12 budget at this town meeting.
Oh, Jody, you're muted. Jody.
I know people wish they had that button for me often, but the state legislature gave us an option. If we could not hold a town meeting, we could propose a 1/12 or now 3/12 budget to the Board of Selectmen and then submit that to the state for approval. But we did not like that option because there's many other articles on this warrant that are not having to do with just an operating budget. You know, many of the things we've already talked about are not in the operating budget. So we felt it was critical to bring this to the town, hopefully in a streamlined meeting, so we could get moving on a lot of these other projects that we're bringing forward to you. So that was an option. The selectmen supported taking this to town meeting, and now that we are doing that, that no longer will remain an option for us. So whatever town meeting decides, that's our legislative branch. That is what we will have moving forward into fiscal year 21.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, I don't think we normally go through the entire budget at the town meeting preview. It's pretty long. Do you have something that you'd like to sort of say overall, or how, we want to give people a chance to ask questions?
Jody covered everything I was going to say, surprisingly. So I think if we have any questions out there, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
Okay, I think that works. Wait and see if Elizabeth sees any questions coming in.
Let's see.
This is often one of the things that tends to go faster now.
If you want, Laura, yes. Could I just, while we're seeing if there's a question, I just want to mention that, our town continues to operate during this COVID crisis, and we have continued to do that from when it started differently, but we have continued to provide all the services. But many of these things there's construction projects, there's highway projects, there's water department projects. We want this town to continue, and we want to continue operating. So we felt it strongly that we need to continue operations as normally as possible. We have no idea how long this pandemic's going to last, and it could be with us for a very long time. So that's another reason that we'd really like to get beyond just a 1/12 budget.
So Jody, we have another question that it sounds like we're voting on an operating budget that is very likely to change, making this vote moot. What is the advantage of this?
Well, what I would say is I'm not sure I would agree with that. We need to continue operations. We're a big town, 30 square miles. There's a lot to do. You want to continue to have your roads taken care of, in the winter plowed. You want to get your water. You want to be able to rely on all the services, police, fire, everything we offer. The senior center and library have continued to do things remotely. So this allows us to continue operations. If we are subjected to revenue reductions, we stand poised, ready to make those changes, and there will be changes, and we did discuss those the other night. But the town is not closing up. I'm sure you want to continue to have the beaches open, and the playgrounds are now open, and all the other things that we enjoy in this town. So we are ready to make reductions if we need to, but I think the majority of residents would like to continue our town services at the level they are right now.
Okay. Any more questions on the budget?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we can always come back to it if people think of other things. That's certainly one of the biggest articles on the warrant. So we'll move on to now Article 9, appropriate Chapter 90 local transportation funds for roadway maintenance. Andrea, you were going to speak. This is also a consent agenda article.
Yes, so these are the funds that we get from the state. They're Chapter 90 funds, and they are used to exactly what it says, to repair and maintain our roadways in Westford. I guess I'll turn to Dan to ask him, because I suspect people might want to know. Do we know what our Chapter 90 funds are yet, approximately?
I haven't seen the prediction for next year yet, but for FY20, it's about $891,000.
Great, thanks.
Article 10, appropriate funds from Water Enterprise Other Post-Employment Benefits Stabilization Fund to the Water Enterprise budget. This is a consent agenda item, and it would not be a town meeting preview without Dan talking about OPEB, so I will let him.
Love OPEBs. So this is for the Water Enterprise. This is basically a model of how the OPEB funding is supposed to work. This transfer being taken from the OPEB stabilization is to fund the current year water retiree costs for health insurance and life insurance. In their operating budget, they actually have an appropriation into the water OPEB stabilization for $30,000 to pay for the accrued costs or normal costs for FY21. So this is really a model on how this should work if we were fully funded.
Great, thank you. Now next is Article 11, also on the consent agenda. Authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept easements. Andrea, I think we sort of touched on this already, but.
We did, and this is another article that appears on our town meeting warrant annually. And again, it allows the select board to accept, easements for sidewalks, utilities, drainage, the installation of utility poles that come up during the course of the year.
Great, thank you. Now the next 4 articles are all citizens petitions. We've read out the description of them. I think we were not going to cover them here unless somebody had a specific question, or if one of the petitioners was on the call and wanted to say something. Since the expectation is that they will be presented to town meeting to be postponed until the fall, except for Article 12. So did we want to see if there were any questions on this or on the process that we're taking with these?
Laura, can we also just include 18 to see if there are any questions, since 18 is the last citizens petition as well?
Yeah, no, good point. Yep, we can take it out of order. Yes, basically all the citizens petitions. Are there any questions that people had, since we aren't going to really go into detail on them tonight?
I don't see any questions.
Okay, great. Then that takes us to Article 16, which is revise the general bylaws to merge the Affordable Housing Committee and Affordable Housing Trust into one committee. And this is also on the consent agenda. And Andrea.
Right. So currently in town, we have two separate committees. One is the Affordable Housing Committee, which has been in existence for at least 30, if not 35 years. And we have an Affordable Housing Trust Fund committee, which is established by Massachusetts general law. Those two committees have been meeting over at least probably the last 4 or 5 years, usually together, one right after the other. But there are at times, there is difficulty in getting quorums for either one of the committees. They also work very closely with one another and in conjunction with one another in terms of advocating for supporting and funding of affordable housing here in Westford. So the committees among themselves and the members among themselves discussed how we might work more efficiently and in a more organized and effective manner. And so after much discussion, the committees themselves thought that the best way to do this and to move forward was to combine the two committees into one. And so that's what this article is proposing to do. And the membership would be 9 members.
Great. It's good to know that it's something that the committees themselves want. So I think that is good. Any questions on affordable housing committees? Okay. And then that takes us to our last article, Article 17, also on the consent agenda, accept Jenny Richards Road as a public way. Jody, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. So, you know, many times we have a road that we bring to the town meeting to be accepted as a public way. And in many cases, the road is brought up to a certain level for the town to accept. I know there were issues with this road. I'm not really sure if Paul Starrett is out there, if there's any direct questions, or we could get back to the people about it. But it is a road that we are ready to accept, that I think the residents have been waiting for that for many, many years. So.
Okay.
No questions.
Okay. Good.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
go ahead. Not about that. A few things have come in for the end.
okay. Well, we are at the end, so this is a good time to just catch up any other issues that people thought of while we were going through the other articles.
Well, I did have a question a little bit ago of how many people were attending this meeting, and we have 70 people in attendance right now. Some folks have been coming and going, but we would like to thank everyone who has tuned in tonight. We had a question that was submitted ahead of time about Wi-Fi and the Wi-Fi capability at the field. Would Mike Wells like to speak to that?
Certainly, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. So we discussed this at some length before when we were planning the meeting, and we decided that we would not be trying to reproduce the large presentation screen that we have at the indoor meetings. But for one thing, at a technical level, it's quite difficult to do outdoors with a large number of people spread over an area that big. We don't really have outdoor Wi-Fi equipment. We've no need for it. It's, you know, our business is covering inside buildings. But also we were concerned about the issue of equity for providing information to a subset of the people who were at the meeting and the issues that might present. So for this meeting, we're not going to attempt to do that. If we continue down this path and we have to have subsequent meetings outdoors or in some other unusual location, I think we'll revisit it to try and circle back and see if we can't do something like that. But we are not. However, of course, there is cellular coverage there, so people will be able to use their devices to go online and look at things on the website or documents that are on the website if they want to.
Thank you, Mike. We have a question from Bill Harmon about Article 18, and the question is it propose to separate the land that we might keep for parking.
Yeah, this is the disposition of 63 Main Street is a citizen's petition article.
My recollection, and Ellen Hardy is not available tonight to discuss this, though she is in support of dismissing and bringing back in the fall. But my recollection is that she did have a proposal to carve out parking in the back before selling it. So, and I know there is a 63 Main Street webpage too, but that's my recollection, Bill.
Thank you. And Mike, there's a comment here about the cell phone coverage at the academy. Do you have anything more to say in response to that comment?
Apart from I'm not responsible for cell phone coverage by Verizon. No, it actually, well, when we were on the field trying this out, I was able to use my cell coverage okay on the field. We boost the cellular signals in the buildings to try and make the phones usable inside the buildings, WA and a couple of other buildings. But my experience when we were there testing this the other day is that outdoors on the field, the coverage is okay. How it'll hold up with a lot of people there, I don't know. But
thank you. And we have $1 million question that will go to Susan. And we had someone ask, how long will town meeting last?
It'll be like a pregnancy. It lasts as long as it's supposed to.
Good answer.
Thank you. And then our final question or comment was just a big thank you to Westford Cat for covering this tonight and making it available after this evening so that folks can tune in and have their questions answered, hopefully. So thank you to the crew over at Westford Cat. We appreciate your help this evening.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I 100% agree. So if that's anybody else had anything that they wanted to just let the voters know before? Oh, Jody.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
want to thank the league too for making this possible, and this is the biggest crowd we've ever had on one of these, forums. So that's wonderful to hear all the questions and see all the attendees. But I guess I'm just hoping that people are flexible and understanding that we're trying to conduct a town meeting in the safest way possible, do the town business, be a little patient with us. It's going to be a little different, but I'm very proud that we're able to pull this together, and I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to be a little more casual than usual, and I hope you wear comfortable clothes, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all there.
Great. Yeah. Well, we got through this in an hour, almost a little under 2 hours. So hopefully some of the questions that people asked here today will help streamline things.
One more question came in, and that was how quickly will this be posted on Westford Cat?
They're pretty fast. So I don't know if someone there wants to unmute and speak, but I know for other of our events.
I can see Stephen Edwards is there. We actually, there's two different ways they get the data. They can capture what they're screening now, but also sometime later tonight, the video will be given to us, and we'll make that available tomorrow. But Stephen Edwards is in the audience. I don't know if he'd like to speak.
Oh, he commented and said it will be available on YouTube immediately.
Oh, well, there we are.
Oh, well, there you go. I think it's been streaming there this whole time. So yeah, that's great.
So Mike, if I want to watch a replay, I'll be able to do that.
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
Yes, you will.
Oh, Susan, yeah.
Also, the only beverage that would be allowed if people did bring a drink is water on the field, because any chemicals besides water would be detrimental to the football field.
That's a good point. And I think one of the things I was thinking, if you wanted to like bring your own pencils or things like that, nothing's going to be handed out. So if you want to keep track on your motion sheet, something like that, come prepared with that and the hat and comfortable clothes. So I wanted to also say a huge thank you to all the town employees and the committee members, Westford Cat, and volunteers for working so hard to put together town meeting. Remember, it will be held at 9 a.m. on Saturday, June 20th at Westford Academy's Trustees Field. I also want to remind you that we have an upcoming town election on June 30th, and it's not too late to apply for a mail-in ballot from the town clerk's office. They need to be returned by the end of the day, I believe by the time polls close on June 30th. And you can also vote in person on June 30th. Polls will be open. Stay safe and everyone be well. And thank you so much to everyone for participating in this call.
Thank you, Laura, for moderating.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Laura.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.